Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Colony Drop, your favorite Gundam podcast. My name is Isaac.
And my name is Brian, and this is a podcast where we talk about anything and everything related to the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise. From the anime, to the music, to the models, to the manga, you name it, we do it.
That is absolutely right, Brian. We talk about everything, including lore and concepts. And something we're going to talk about today is a very, shall we say, a contentious topic, a topic charged with emotion because of its execution in a recently made Gundam series, which was Gundam 00.
Yes.
Today, Brian, we're going to talk about aliens, aka extraterrestrials.
That's right. And we're going to talk about, can aliens be done right in Gundam? Is it possible, Isaac?
Right. Yeah. We're not, sorry, listeners, we're not going to talk about how they were done in 00 because we know that was a train wreck. That was a terrible movie. We're going to talk about if they were redone, and between you and me, Brian, and our listeners, I think it's inevitable that we're going to see them again just because how much UFOs are trending in social media and the news, and also how it has the chance of being interesting. And one of Gundam's pitfalls is that it can be a bit repetitive. So I'd put my money on aliens showing up again. Now the question is, can it be done right?
I agree. So I attacked this in a few ways, Isaac. I looked at how aliens have been done in Gundam so far. And then I looked at that and I thought, did I like those or did I not like them?
You did not.
And then I thought, okay, what factors need to exist within a story if you were going to do them again and do them right, or in a way that I think they should be done?
The answer is better factors.
Just all around better.
Find the 00 team and fire them.
And then I tried to think of like, okay, well, if I had to put my factors that need to exist into action, how would I do it? Is that somewhat similar to how you approach this, or how did you think about this?
Absolutely. I looked at what didn't work with Gundam, which was a lot. and I put together what would we need that would be interesting, that would be unique in Gundam, and that would just be a better viewing experience. Because for anybody that doesn't know yet, or they haven't seen it, 00 had 2 seasons, right? Not terrible, right? Yeah, they had some good moments and stuff like that. All right. They finished the series with a movie, a 2-hour, maybe it was like 1 hour and a half movie that featured aliens. And it was just so bizarre and just a terrible way to do it. Comment below if you really enjoyed that 00 movie and tell us why. My God. But yeah, so we're trying to approach this as, how could they be done right in the near future if Sunrise decides to, pump out another series involving aliens? Because as we all know, if you're a regular watcher of Gundam, if you're a fan, aliens really don't show up in the series. It's about human versus human conflict.
So why don't we take a moment to discuss what's been done so far and why we didn't like them. And that way the listeners can decide whether or not they're on our side.
That's a good idea. Take it away, Brian. Give us the tour of what's been done.
Okay. So to my knowledge, there's been 3 instances of aliens in Gundam. I'm going to leave our favorite 00 for last. So the first one I want to point out is from the Universal Century. In the manga series Crossbone Gundam Ghost, there is a alien virus or viral substance known as Angel's Call. And it just they just find it, floating out in space. And you know what, Isaac? I'm okay with this in concept. I can't speak about execution because I haven't actually read Crossbone Ghost. But as a concept, I'm okay with an alien virus. It's not like aliens warped in on some ship or something.
Yeah, I have to say, that sounds pretty hard science fiction, very grounded in reality, right?
Right. So that, I think I'm willing to go along with that. I think that would fit in with the Universal Century's, I won't say hard science, but more hard science approach relative to the other universes. And by the way, Isaac, when I was looking up Angel's Call, because I had forgotten what it was, I know we've talked about it on this podcast before, but I had forgotten what it was before this podcast, so I went and looked it up again. And I found out that in Crossbone Gundam Dust, which I believe is the sequel to Ghost, and there's actually a new one coming out starting this year soon called, I think, X11. Zeon is back again, Isaac, and the faction is now called Zabi Zeon. From what I gather, the first few Crossbone Gundam series are looked upon like fairly pretty well by the fandom, and then the last few just sound completely off the rails. I really want to read them. They're not translated, but yeah, wow. Anyway, that's a entirely tangent, but you should read some of the things that are happening.
You had me at Zabi Zeon.
So yeah, that's the first one. Angel's Call, Alien Virus. I think that's okay. I'm on board with that. Number 2 is our favorite, Isaac, the Space Whales from Gundam Seed.
Yes.
And again, I don't mind this concept. I think what I didn't like about it, Isaac, was they didn't do anything with it. What a waste.
Yeah, I mean, it had such implications, right? Like, where did George Glenn get them? There must be other life forms on whatever planet they were in. But by space whales, does he mean these things that just fly through space in whatever area of space he was exploring? There's so many questions, but at the end of the day, they ended up being a knickknack for the plant leadership to keep in their little, I don't know, their break room, right?
Yeah, their big meeting room that was like too big. Yeah, exactly. It was relegated to just this thing that they mentioned that had huge implications for the world, but was never really explained. And that kind of seems like one of those things to me, Isaac, where they did it and then they thought afterwards, maybe that was kind of dumb, or we don't really want to go down that road, and they just never talked about it again.
Right.
It reminds me of, like, if there's Stargate fans out there, do you remember, Isaac, when if you shot someone 3 times with a Zat, they would disintegrate? So if you shot them once, you'd stun them, twice you'd kill them, and then in the 3rd time you would disintegrate them. And the writers eventually realized that disintegrating them was like really dumb, and so they just stopped doing it after like the 2nd or 3rd season, and they just never mentioned it again. So to me, that's the Space Whales.
There must be some lore explanation, right? Like, well, things were getting rough for the Tok'ra, so they really had to power down like how much energy each Zat gun could get, or something like that, right? Their supply chain wouldn't allow for the death blow at shot 3.
They were running out of crystals.
Yeah, they're like, I don't know, things are getting tough with Apophis attacking us.
And then number 3, Isaac, is our anti-favorite, I'll say. If the Space Whales are our favorite, then these are our anti-favorite. They were called the Extraterrestrial Living Metal Shapeshifters, which I believe they were abbreviated ELS, and I believe you pronounce it ELSES. I watched it in Japanese, so I don't actually know how the dub pronounced it, but I understand that you say ELSES. So these, Isaac, I'm going to say why I hated them, and we can compare notes.
Of course.
So I hated them because you spent the whole show watching Gundams fight in a war about Earth and human endeavors, and then we get a curveball at the end that this whole thing was actually a ruse to make contact with extraterrestrials. And I didn't buy that at all. It felt really forced to me, almost like mashing together 2 unrelated stories and then just trying to bridge them with, oh, by the way, I always wanted to tell an alien story. And this is a point we'll talk about later, but aliens in general, if they do arrive, they are going to be so much more powerful than humanity. It wouldn't be a contest. And we kind of saw that in the movie, because in order to make it a contest, the 00 Gundam was elevated to like godlike levels of power that made no sense in the Gundam universe. So that's why I didn't like it. It came out of left field, and it did not feel like Gundam at all to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, there was nothing interesting about them. I remember them being extremely powerful to the point where our cast of characters fighting them in their Gundams were outmatched, but the combat wasn't that interesting because these ELSs, they kind of fight like parasites or something like, well, not parasites, but I just remember them being nigh invulnerable, and they like attach to things, and it's not so much a fight as you're fighting like, I don't know, invincible fungi or something like that. And then at the end, from what I remember, it ends up being revealed that this was all sort of a miscommunication, right? And they're eager to work with humanity, and everybody holds hands at the end and sings. So
yeah, it was a little kumbaya with Setsuna there.
Yeah, humanity. I mean, spoiler alert. Sorry, sorry, listeners ahead of time. But I mean, come on.
They're old spoilers at this point. So.
Yeah, I mean, this 00's been out for a while. Like, oh no, they spoiled it. All right. Yeah, comment below if you're mad that we spoiled the 00 movie. It's been out for 10 years or something.
And by the way, I say this, Isaac, as I really liked season 1 of 00.
Yeah. 00 had a lot of cool things in it, but what a bad way to end the series. And what's even more bizarre is like at the end, after all this chaos and destruction and all that, humanity and the aliens like hold hands and explore the galaxy together. I was like, what?
I felt like the writer director, I feel like they wanted to get an alien story in there. They just liked that concept. I just feel like Gundam is a weird vehicle to do your alien story in the movie that caps off the series. I feel like, and this will be one of my factors later, aliens need to be baked into your story from the very beginning. If they were baked into the very beginning from Double O, man, I didn't buy that, or I didn't pick up on that. I don't know.
Also, it's not a Gundam series. It's not a Gundam OVA movie unless we have mobile suits fighting mobile suits.
Interesting.
Yeah, if we have mobile suits becoming inoperable because these silver spindles get attached to them, that's not quite the same thing.
Agree. Yeah. So that's what we thought of the aliens that do exist in Gundam. We'd be very curious to hear what the listeners think. So if we were going to go down the alien road, Isaac, say right now, Sunrise is like, hey, UFOs, they're just trending all over the place, and everyone loves them again.
Even the government's going to release info or something like that.
Yeah, we've now gotten to the point where people who were interested in UFOs as children are now running the government. So now they're like, let's get those files out there. Why not release them? So here we are. So what factors need to be there if you're going to do aliens in a Gundam series, Isaac? Or at least what factors do you need to consider?
Okay. Number one, I think whatever these aliens are, there needs to be mobile suit combat in the series. That's like from the get-go. We can't have a Double O repeat where like it's essentially a story about them on a fact-finding mission, right? And there's almost no mobile suit combat. Okay, so I think that's number one. Number two, the aliens need to be done in an interesting way. They can't be these sort of beyond communication silver spindles that are almost more like a self-replicating parasite or hassle that just starts plaguing humanity, and the Gundam pilots are going to try to struggle against it with their Gundams, but ultimately it's something invincible. They have to be a type of alien you can knock down and go toe-to-toe with, I think.
Got it. That makes sense. So on my list I have humans and aliens need to be roughly on the same level of technology or have some way to equalize things. So like in Double O, the aliens were just far and above basically everything except the Double O with whatever the engines were called. And presumably the Gundams in this story are sort of the equalizer, right? You'd have to paint your story around that. Why is that the case? Maybe the aliens are limited. Maybe there's not unlimited, troops that they can send in. Are they stranded here for some reason? And again, this goes back to the idea that if aliens were to actually just show up here, Isaac, they would be so far advanced past humanity's technology, it wouldn't be a challenge. So you have to find some way to get them. You have to make it so there's a fight and it's winnable for our heroes. I think what people don't understand is that space is incredibly vast, and for aliens to get here somehow, they would have so much more like capabilities to use either energy or just technology way beyond what we have. So they're not going to show up and be using bullets is what I'm saying here. So you need an equalizer to make it a fair fight.
They're not going to show up and put infantry on the ground and with their little helmets and their
right.
Their lasers.
Yes, and you see this in other stories, right? Like in Pacific Rim, for example, the aliens only send a few kaiju at a time, right? Because if they sent them all, we would lose.
They took notes from like the bad guys from Power Rangers. Like just even though you can mass produce monsters, just send one a week.
We got to stretch out the season,
Yeah, exactly.
I think you have to be careful here because I think whatever you do, it needs to not be the Gundam version of another franchise. And this might be pretty difficult because there's a lot of franchises out there with aliens. So, like in particular, I feel like you have to somehow stray from anything resembling Macross.
Absolutely. You took the words right out of my mouth. I don't think a Gundam series would feel like Gundam if it was our heroes in the Gundam squad as part of the Earth sphere are fighting against an invasion of the galactoids, and they got their alien mobile suits or whatever, and they're fighting it out. It would feel exactly like Macross.
I really feel like if you're going to avoid any comparison, that's the one you want to avoid.
Yeah.
The other ones I'd be worried about are like Starship Troopers. I think the book version of Starship Troopers, I've not read it, but I know it uses, I'm pretty sure like the Space Marines in there use like exosuits and they fight a bunch of bugs.
Yeah. Bugs as aliens it's overdone and it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like it's a shallow enemy.
Yeah, it is one way to go though. I tipped my hand at the bug story, but I'm not in love with it, so.
No.
And then I think the aliens need to be part of your story from the beginning, or at least a planned twist that makes sense within your story. So this is what I mean about Double O. You got to the movie at Double O, and all of a sudden aliens they became like the main purpose of Double O, and it was like I didn't really get that from watching 50 episodes. So if it feels disconnected from the 50 episodes that I just watched, and you're telling me that the 2-hour finale is going to be about that, it just seems really odd. So I feel like the aliens need to be part of your story from the very beginning.
In Double O's defense, like there were maybe a few times, I'm going to say like less than 5, where I vaguely remember, I think his name was Areola. Or
Areola. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Aeolia Schoenberg or whatever.
Yeah, Areola Shinzen or whatever his name was. The guy that actually designed the Gundams and created Celestial Being. He always said over and over again in his little, the same video snippet that he left for everybody, I think the ultimate purpose of the Gundams was for the dialogues to come. And nobody really understood what that meant, or they just assumed it meant, dialogues between different human countries and factions. But ultimately, I guess it revealed to be dialogues with a non-human species.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, maybe I should have...
But that was so vague that, like... clearly didn't, hold our hand in that story to introduce it to us.
Yeah, maybe I should have believed in it more then. I guess I remember him saying that, but I didn't take that to mean like we were literally going to meet aliens at the end of the show.
And in our defense as viewers, like watching the video of the dead Gundam designer, that's not really forefront in our minds compared to the living characters and villains and the things they talk about and say.
Right. So then I started to think, okay, Isaac, how would you go about building your idea? And one of my thoughts was the first thing you said, that it has to have mobile suit combat. I feel like you have to decide right away what the combat is going to look like in your alien story. Is it going to be Gundam versus mobile suit, or is it going to be Gundam versus organic aliens? And so that means either are you in a Macross story, or are you in our Gundam Seed Space Whale counterattack film, right? Where the Gundams are just carving up space whales out in the middle of space that are just floating, swimming in space. PETA would hate it.
People are going to love our side story, Gundam Seed Whale of a Tale, when it comes out. The plants and the Earth Alliance have to team up to take on the whales.
They're just these unstoppable whales. They just swim in from, the outer planets.
If you think a whale's massive, imagine a whale piloting a whale mobile suit.
And then, I think you need to decide what kind of aliens you're going to have. Are they going to be intelligent and interactable, like Star Trek? Or are they going to be intelligent and what I would say non-interactable? So like xenomorphs from the Alien franchise.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah, there's really, no one's ever had a conversation with a xenomorph, right? And asked about like, who's their leader? How do they run things in their society? It's to an extent, it's like fighting a force of nature or a creature you'd never be able to communicate with.
Right, because one begets a political story and one begets a Tremors.
Yeah.
Drama,
survival type, even horror, right?
Right. And then you got to decide, why are your aliens here, Isaac? How did they get here? Are we on Earth or are we somewhere completely different? Because that'd be an option too, right?
Yeah. If this story's been done from the ground up, I'd be very surprised if Sunrise put an alien story in the UC. I think doing it in its own little universe is more than appropriate.
Yeah. Then you got to set the technology level. Has humanity conquered the stars? Do we have faster than light travel? I feel like that really influences a lot about your story.
Yeah, right. If humanity's kind of more low tech or kind of the tech we've usually seen in Gundam, everyone's still pretty much stuck around Earth.
If you're on low tech, then I have images of... Have you ever seen the Battleship movie, Isaac?
Are you talking about the one with Liam Neeson?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
The one where at the very end they pull the ship around, they anchor it or something, and then they do the quick turnaround and they fire and they blow up the. Anyway.
Yeah. Sure.
Because then you're gonna have the low tech tactics like that.
You know, the worst thing about that movie is he never said the famous line, right? "You sunk my battleship," which was a crime. That movie would have been so much better if he said that. If I'm remembering right, the aliens, when they're fighting the battleship, they set up a grid, right? Like
they do. It's like a little shield. Yeah.
A grid that the humans can see, though, so they know they're in the game.
It's all about that product placement, man.
Yeah, here's our targeting system. We've never designed it so that our enemies can't use it too, but we're going to use it anyway.
And then my last thing to consider, Isaac, is probably the deepest question, which maybe this is a whole episode in itself, but why does this story that you're telling with an alien need to be a Gundam story and not something else? Is that part of the problem, Isaac? Are aliens inherently too far from what makes Gundam Gundam? What's your thought on that?
I'll definitely say this. Aliens are not necessary for Gundam. All that's necessary for Gundam is human versus human conflict. That's what every Gundam series is really hinged on. Gundams are really something that's built by humans for humans. I don't think I'd enjoy seeing an alien Gundam. I don't think an alien Gundam or even alien mobile suits is something that would be that interesting. At that point, we're just watching, I think a generic space opera almost, except they swapped out fighters for mobile suits at that point.
Yeah.
So no, to answer your question. Aliens in Gundam don't really bring anything new except the fact that they're not really done that often in Gundam. That is it.
Okay. So I know you tried to make an alien Gundam show. I have two ideas. I'm not in love with them.
Okay.
I do think it's hard. I think it's hard to make an alien Gundam show that isn't Macross, or it isn't Tekkaman Blade, or it isn't Pacific Rim. I'm struggling a little bit with how to make it Gundam. Like, why is it Gundam?
Right.
So, lay it on me. Give me the Gundam aliens.
All right, here we go. So, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. We can just do what we've seen is very effective. And something I felt is a really good alien story, and also a human story at the same time, which would be great for Gundam, is The Thing. If anyone listening isn't familiar with The Thing, it's about this alien life form that's able to take on the appearance of other people and spread that way, kill people. A pretty insidious force. I feel like a Gundam series that takes that approach with its alien, where the alien can kind of turn into people or look like people, or at least passes humans that we know, characters that our characters know, would be probably the best way to approach aliens, because it still allows our characters and our antagonists to pilot Gundams, pilot mobile suits, fight each other, communicate with each other, and all the while there's still an alien threat among them. To sort of set up the scenario, I feel like its own universe would be great, and it would give you sort of a blank slate as far as what you want to do. You could start off making it sort of similar to After War Gundam X. By that I mean you have your stand-in Earth Federation that's not called the Earth Federation. Call it the Earth Union or whatever. You have your stand-in Zeon that's not called Zeon. Call it the the colonial empire. And they're battling it out, right? They're having a war, just like the 1 Year War. Probably start the story off in the middle of the war. No need to waste time. But you could have the characters, or at least maybe jump back and forth between characters on both sides, quickly realize that unusual things are happening. And maybe there's a couple of alien ships that get discovered by each side. And from there, it becomes quite clear to the characters that a lot of humans aren't actually humans anymore. And this threat is going to maybe jeopardize all humanity. So ultimately, the story goes on, and the characters on both sides that are still human, or at least that think they're still human, have to work together in order to fight this alien menace and save humanity.
So I like this because it has the 3-faction thing that we saw in Iron-Blooded Orphans. How many of these aliens are there?
I like the idea that essentially 2 ships came, so not a ton of aliens.
Okay.
but at the same time, they are able to reproduce with enough time. So it's a slow growing threat. So there isn't a fleet that shows up out of nowhere, and now we're all of a sudden in a, we're in a fleet battle in Star Trek. No, that's not going to happen. These aliens are clearly sneaky, and for whatever reason, they don't like going toe-to-toe with their enemies. So they much rather would co-opt people's technology and even their bodies, and then from there do their sneaky stuff until they actually win.
I guess since there's only 2 ships worth of them, what's stopping our humans from just, attacking their ships? Or are they far and beyond above us, or...
Humanity does, what they always do when they see something new interesting. They just investigate it right away, and the people that come back really aren't themselves anymore, but by then it's kind of too late. From there, they start spreading pretty sneakily, right? It's not necessarily an alien gets in one ship and everybody gets taken over. It's more maybe the alien will allow a few key people to get taken over, and then, spread to another ship, spread to a side, or etc., parts of Earth. So it's not an instantaneous takeover, but these aliens clearly are, for whatever reason, however they evolved, they're much better at taking over people and using their things than developing their own things and using those to fight and, take what they want.
What's the aliens' goal in this? To eradicate humanity and take control of the planet, or are they trying to just kind of secretly be in charge? Kind of like a secret invasion scenario from Marvel with the Skrulls.
I think ultimately they'd want to be, kind of the only species on our beautiful Earth sphere. That could also maybe explain why the war starts really heating up to the point where insane things start happening, like maybe possible mass colony drop or just weapons of mass destruction that were kind of unthinkable, before the alien threat showed up.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, they wouldn't have the same moral compass that we would.
No, and also since they're targeting, humans, who cares if we commit war crimes at that point? I feel like a lot of times in Gundam, we always get to, the stakes always rise, right? The super weapons come out and the factions start blowing each other away. In our own world, we've had like instances where that's happened too, but I also feel like at the end of the day, a lot of the powerful countries would bend over backwards not to have a nuclear war, no matter how bad things were getting. So the fact that it happens in this Gundam story shows that, okay, a few key people in power are clearly not on humanity's side if they're trying to wipe out large percentages of humanity.
Yeah, definitely. You in our world, cooler heads typically prevail.
Right.
Isn't there that one story about during the Cold War? I think it was the Russians detected like a nuclear launch, but the general or whoever was in charge of launching the counter nuclear missile, he was like, I don't know if I believe that, and it didn't turn out to be like a flock of geese or something. Right,
it was something like that. I think there were 3 officers, and it had to be unanimous to order the beginning of the responding attack. One person dissented and said, I think his reasoning when he actually got interviewed was, if the United States was attacking, they'd send more than just a handful of missiles.
Right.
So a logic shows up, I think, when you're close to destroying large amounts of humanity.
Yeah, just like the hero from Gundam Seed, the secretary of Mr. Zala.
That's right, actually. Yeah, actually, everybody in that room was really not going to go ahead with it, I think, right?
Yeah, they were all kind of like, you know what, this is a little much here.
Well, Patrick had to like push the technician in front of him out of the way, take control of that computer, and then actually, I guess, enter some commands that he knew that would give him control to fire.
Yeah, he like designed the operating system. Apparently,
Man, another sign of a coordinator just taking an operating system and improving it, just like Kira.
Yeah, I like this because it's a play on it lets you put aliens into the 1 Year War without really sullying the UC. I don't think we would want to bring aliens into the UC at all. In this way, I mean, I know we have the virus thing, but that's not at all on this level, right? I think the most interesting thing is this moral compass thing. They have no restrictions using weapons of mass destruction on either side, right? They could escalate the war secretly to catastrophic consequences.
Maybe the best thing about this approach, or approach that would be very similar like it if Sunrise did it, would be that we still have humans and seemingly humans interacting, communicating with each other, having drama and, character dialogue and development with each other. It's not humans and some completely foreign and bizarre alien that has a different language or just acts so otherworldly. It's humans and aliens that are clearly doing their best to mimic humans and try not to get detected.
How do you think that humanity wins in this story? Or do they win?
I think humanity does win. I think maybe teaming up the two sides that were initially at war in the beginning, the space noids and then the earth noids teaming up would ultimately tip the scales in their favor, I think. Maybe the aliens also make a mistake where they sort of reveal themselves to an extent at the end, or at least towards the end, where they have their own faction that shows up, not in their own vehicles. They're still using human vehicles, but at that point they feel like there's enough of them that, okay, it's at this point we're just trying to mop up humanity. But, of course things don't go their way.
So what you're telling me is that they don't end up holding hands and singing Kumbaya at the end.
No, at the end we can make it very clear that there's, even though humanity won and they're clearly on much better terms, there's still some disagreements, but for the time there can maybe at least begin talks of a ceasefire.
When the first human finds an alien, does he punch it and say, "Welcome to Earth"?
No, I think some mystery around the actual interaction would be much more enticing or even spooky to an extent. All we really need to see is each investigation team maybe go into the ship, maybe some issues with communications once they're inside the ship, and then the team comes out and says everything's okay. But we assumed things weren't okay at all.
How early in this, because this I think is a big point, how early in this series would you reveal the aliens?
I feel like we do a gut punch at the end of episode 1 where the character we thought was the main character gets taken over.
Interesting.
And on that note, him essentially dying.
Okay, well, my ideas are not great, but we'll go through them and I'll say why I did them and why I don't think they work.
Brian, I think I speak for all the listeners when I say your ideas are all great. So buck up and tell us.
The first one I'm going to call Gundam Exo-Terminators.
Wow.
This is my version of like the bug story. So I tried to split my ideas into like, one is heavy on Gundams and the other is heavy on political theater. So this is where you'd be facing sort of vicious aliens that are larger than humans and they require Gundams to fight somehow.
Wow.
Maybe they're not able to be tracked by radar, so you can't target them with missiles. You'd have to have an excuse for why Gundams were developed to fight these aliens. I don't think they should be as big as like Pacific Rim. I don't want it to feel like a copy, right?
So they're mobile suit size then? I mean, they're not...
Yes.
I mean, yeah. Pacific Rim, the Jaegers were way bigger than mobile suits, so... Okay.
Right. I'm thinking like F91 size.
Okay, cool. I mean, you can explain away pretty easily, right? Why mobile suits had to be developed. Maybe tanks did poorly, maybe fighter craft did poorly, and as usual, mobile suits outperformed them both.
Yeah, I was thinking, it's too big for humans to interact and fight with them just being a human, and maybe tanks and planes don't do well, and so you have to go into something a little more hardcore. Maybe the reason why you needed Gundams was you needed to be able to fight faster and be more agile, so you kind of need the equivalent of a Psycommu or a Laia Vignana system.
Ooh.
But then after that, I was like, well, this is basically just the Calamity War from Iron-Blooded Orphans with aliens instead of mobile armors.
Yeah.
So maybe they should just make that instead. But, if you did aliens, then you could bring in a bit of like a survival or like horror theme, right? Because the Alien franchise itself, there's some horror there, right?
Yeah, lots. In your defense, though, Brian, like... the aliens you're talking about being the scale of mobile suits or miniature mobile suits is way different than the massive mobile armors from Iron-Blooded Orphans.
Yeah, that's true. And then perhaps the aliens drifted in from outer space. Maybe they were dormant on an asteroid, and that way there's a limited number of them, and the fight is winnable. The only thing is, I think this might be too close to Tekkaman Blade, or sort of any other series where there's mecha fighting mecha-sized aliens. Like, I feel like that's a little bit too generic.
Yeah.
That's why I think maybe that one isn't unique enough to be a real series.
Voltron when the monsters show up.
Yeah, there you go. Even though I love Voltron, I mean, then you could just go watch Voltron. You don't need to watch the Gundam version of Voltron.
There you go. Voltron is great. Listeners, if you haven't seen Voltron, please check it out.
Second idea was like, okay, what if I went away from the sort of organic fights with, big aliens and more into the political arena? So if you just made the Gundam version of Star Trek, if you're going to go all in on aliens, just maybe have multiple alien races and have this far, far in the future where we've moved beyond our solar system and can travel vast distances from the beginning. I mean, you would have to establish why everyone uses a mobile suit to fight, because that seems kind of like an odd thing. Maybe everyone uses Minovsky physics or the equivalent of Minovsky physics in this universe, and so mobile suits just make the most sense. Maybe that's the secret to traveling vast distances. And then, this is where you could get your political stuff that Gundam is typically known for. You could have warring factions about, independence and territories and things like that.
A proud warrior race.
Yeah, the Klingons show up.
Yeah.
And
the science race, the cyborg race. Who else? The merchant race.
Yeah. So I think that gets you your political, but then I think that's too generic. I think that's just Star Trek Gundam.
Yeah, it's sci-fi by the numbers, right?
Yeah, so I think that's why Aliens and Gundam is hard. I outside of how you've done it, where the aliens step into the existing Gundam conflict, I have a hard time of seeing how you can do aliens and make it feel authentically Gundam.
Right, and the version of aliens being in Gundam that I described, it could just as well be essentially a conspiracy with conspirators on both factions, right? Their interaction would be almost the same.
Yeah, that's right. You could have a third faction that simply manipulates the other two, and if it was human, it would just their mode of interaction would be different, but the outcome might be the same.
Yeah, they could be some kind of cult that wants to wipe out humanity, and they've been lying low, and that's why they're ratcheting up the stakes in the war, or who knows, some other type of conspiracy. But the point is, my version of just having aliens looking like humans is solely just to keep the conflict, seemingly on the surface at least, human versus human.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you went with no aliens and just human manipulators, you would lose the potential for horror and surprise themes, right? So that would be a little different, I suppose.
Yeah, but there hasn't really been a Gundam horror, so this would all be really experimental to see how it goes. Getting back to your concept where humans were fighting sort of bugs, what do you see the human drama in that concept?
I think it's mainly survival.
Okay.
If you fail, then humanity's it's not going to work out.
So in your story, is humanity kind of on the ropes, like they're not doing too great?
Yeah, I would say they're not doing any better than people are in Pacific Rim.
Okay. Oh, bad.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing well.
Bad to the point where the government's hiding how bad it is.
I think you have to be doing bad in that scenario because it's going to take a while to make a Gundam. You can't just whip one up, right? So this conflict has to have been going for at least a few years.
So in your alien bug concept, were the mobile suits created specifically to fight the bugs? And are the Gundams maybe, I guess, advanced version of them? Or are the Gundams the prototype that was built to actually go toe-to-toe with the bugs, and then the mass-produced mobile suits like the GM are actually what they crank out to sort of match the numbers?
You'd have to have some basis in reality. You can't just be like, we need a Gundam to fight this. That doesn't make any sense, right? So maybe what it is they got the idea from construction robots, construction suits. That's why the name is Exo Terminators, because it's exosuits or exoskeletons, and they're acting as exterminators.
Yeah.
It's a really dumb name, but maybe one of those performed well, and they got the idea to expand them.
Okay. So these bugs, is there ever any communication between humans and the bugs, or is it that's impossible, just like the Starship Troopers?
No, I don't think you'd get very much communication at all. And they don't have to be bugs. I mean, they could be any sort of creature-looking thing.
Are they fully organic, or are these insects, but they're clearly using their own technology?
No, I was picturing fully organic because I thought that would be different enough from a Gundam perspective that it might be interesting.
Okay. Zerg, Tyranids, something like that.
Yeah, kind of like the Zerg, yeah.
For your the space opera version, There's battles and stuff in Star Trek, but there really isn't that many times where there's full-on war. Is that kind of the same case where our white base is kind of going, across the galaxy, exploring, and there's just maybe different little kingdoms and empires in different corners that are, to varying degrees agreeable or hostile?
Yeah, for the Gundam Trek, I would definitely ratchet up the conflict, right? Because Star Trek is probably not quite as eventful that you would need for a Gundam series.
It's very talkative sci-fi. Right. Good ideas, but still.
Right. Yeah. I think people who watch Gundam maybe want a little bit more action. So I would think that you would have a white base kind of ship, and it would accidentally start some big conflict or get the human race stuck in some conflict, maybe by accident. It's Gundam Trek in the sense that there are multiple alien races that are all sort of interacting in a political manner, versus just, the xenomorph equivalent that shows up and wants to just eat everything, right?
If I saw Gundam Trek, I would want it to be more than one series, because I think shows where they get deep into the politics and the factions and all that and the relationships between these different governments and stuff, I feel like they're served way better when the storylines are longer and they have more time to develop.
Yeah, that's one of the downsides, right? If you're going to have that many factions and things, you need a long runway, which, especially in today's world, are you going to get that? I don't know.
For Sunrise testing out a new Gundam featuring aliens, no, you're going to get one series to get it right and just to test the waters. Gundam Bug Hunters, or what Exo
Terminators.
Exo Terminators? Exo Terminators can be done in one season, I feel like.
Right, yes.
Also, what the hell did I call mine?
Gundam Encounter, I think.
Yeah, Gundam Encounter. Okay, that's a terrible name.
Gundam Body Snatchers.
Yeah, Gundam Body Snatchers can be done in one series, right? Oh, speaking of Body Snatchers, I don't envision them like The Thing, or even like Body Snatchers. They don't set up pea pods and then copy people. And like The Thing, they don't just touch you and they start, you start turning into them. I always thought that was kind of... Did you see The Thing, Brian?
I did, but I think it was a really long time ago, and I can't say that I really remember.
Okay. Well, for our listeners and for you, Brian, The Thing can really... It just needs to touch you with a single cell to take over you, which was always... For me, I always wondered, why did The Thing not explode itself the moment everybody was in a room with it? It would have won. The movie would have been 2 minutes. So to kind of get around that, I always envisioned the replacers in my concept is they kind of have to go into your brain. God, that's so generic, alien. They kind of have to go into your brain to take over you, right? Okay. To reproduce at least, or something like that, right? Maybe there's offspring eat your brain.
What is their corporeal form, or do they have one?
I always imagine them as being some type of not a goo, but some type of maybe webbed kind of slithering type organism that's small enough to fit inside the human brain, consume it, and essentially take its place and hijack the nervous system from inside the skull.
Oh, so they're kind of I don't want to say parasites, but...
They're hijackers. We'll call them hijackers.
Oh, wait, Isaac, are these the Goa'uld?
Pretty close, except the Goa'uld clearly weren't big on reproducing and, filling every human's brain with themselves.
Yeah, okay.
Instead of setting up a pea pod or making actual contact with you just with a single handshake or something like that, I thought it'd be more squicky if the aliens essentially use their eyeball as sort of a chameleon tongue, so it shoots out at the speed of really fast, a fraction of a bullet, hits your eye, and then now there's one inside of you, taking over your brain pretty quickly. So it adds some horror, I think, to it, some body squick, and yeah.
That is very specific and very terrifying.
Yeah, as great as Alien is, the whole face hugger thing's pretty weird if you think about it, right? The whole reproduction's based on this little thing that runs around on the floor, and it's kind of fast, but it kind of has to hope that you don't have a weapon, that you don't have distance. This thing, though, since it knows that it's going to be in the room with you and it looks like a human, it just pretty much needs to get close enough to you, maybe talking to you about your day, look you in the eye, and just wait for you to keep your eyes open, and then it'll, shoot one inside you.
Mobile Suit Gundam, we shot one inside you.
See you in 9 months.
This will be a rated R version of Gundam. It'll only air in late night Japanese TV.
Gundam triple extraterrestrial.
Wow, Isaac. That's a lot of alien stuff we covered today.
I mean, yes, it is, but listeners, if you're a Gundam fan, you know an alien show is coming down the pipeline, right? There's too much Gundam coming for them not to give us another alien idea, another alien presence in a series, in a movie. Something alien's coming because Gundam has to stay fresh, right? It has to try new ideas, new things. Other anime series are experimenting and doing different things. Why shouldn't Gundam? And bringing aliens into space combat in a show set pretty much only in space is inevitable, I think. So get ready for aliens.
Yeah, and Gundam's always one of those shows that, at least for the alternate universes, has always really relied upon what's been popular at the time to influence, the show. So, for example, G Gundam, you can tell that's based on a lot of 90s fighting video games.
Yeah.
Gundam Wing, boy bands were really popular. Age, you got mobile phones.
After War Gundam Max, clearly taking some notes from, Mad Max and Road Warrior and all that.
There you go.
Yeah, you could even say Iron-Blooded Orphans was really based on a lot of more grounded down in tone anime series at the times. And, we didn't talk about Gundam Build Fighters Try. Clearly.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Clearly based on everybody's favorite, tournament type anime series like Pokemon or dueling. Any anime series where there's dueling and a friendly competition and tournament, not life or death.
Neither of our ideas revolve around UFOs. That could be interesting. I don't know how you get a Gundam in there though, but
No, I do. Oh God, I don't think I'd want that. That would almost be like a joke, right? Like a 30-minute, something fun Sunrise did based on an upcoming government report or something. I don't know.
So there you have it, listeners. We're really curious what your thoughts are on aliens in terms of how they exist in Gundam today, primarily 00. So if you're a big fan of the 00 movie, we'd love to hear from you. We want to know why you liked it.
Not only that, if you enjoyed the Gundam 00 movie with the aliens, please comment and tell us why. What did you enjoy about it? But more specifically for everybody else, please comment if you think aliens should show up in Gundam again, and if they did, how would you want them done right? Dollars to donuts, one has to be coming down the pipeline. There's just, it's such a blank slate. I think Sunrise is going to jump at it at some point just to give us something fresh.
Strike while that iron is hot.
Strike while that Gundanium's hot. All right, everybody. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And Brian, why don't you take us out?
Don't forget, tonight before you go to sleep, stand next to your bed, get on your knees, put your hands together, look at your Degwin wall scroll, and hail Zeon. Good night, everybody.